How's everybody been?
Good.
Good.
Uh,
I'm going to look at my computer.
I think we hear you now. A little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, hear you. We hear you.
Testing 1, 2, 3.
Can you hear us?
Yes.
All
Audio
right.
just kicked on. Oh my goodness. Yay.
Yay, good. So we're here. Yeah, I have been struggling the last 2 weeks. I got really sick. Sicker than I've been in years and years and years. I was surprised actually. And so just over the last 2 days, I've started to feel normal and my energy coming back. Yeah. So it was a rough couple of weeks. I pushed through and had to still work and was so tired, resting a lot. And yeah, I had fever for a few days. Yeah, it was nasty. But I'm better now.
I'm glad to hear
I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry you're feeling bad, and I'm glad that you're feeling better.
Yeah, thanks.
I understand what you mean, or how you feel, because that's rough. And it actually took me a long time to figure out the difference between feeling ill and the after effects of feeling ill. And
Right.
now I explain that to people and they're like, I don't know what you mean. Like I'm better now. Like I don't know why I'm exhausted and tired all the time. It's like because your body was like on overdrive for the last 2 weeks. So
Yeah.
it kind of makes sense in that like a mechanical way. And that could be like some people don't understand that. And
Yeah.
I think that all just comes with more experience. But yeah, I'm glad that you're feeling better. And I know sometimes the recovery process afterwards is a little bit more difficult. You're just like,
yeah, it's like,
I wish I had just, it's like the whole recovery process afterward. I'm always like, I wish I had just died.
It's kind of like a mind trip, because you start to worry if you're going to feel better again. Is this brain fog going to go away?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. So then when you start to feel crisp and sharp again, it's like really good. So Will hasn't popped in yet. Let me see if he's responding.
Well, I think he's waiting on 3 p.m. So how are the other two Britneys? How are you guys?
Yeah, do you want to go, Brittany? You were here first.
Well, I'm doing okay. I've just been really busy. I think we always wish that we had more time to devote to all the things that we enjoy more. And so I haven't been able to really do that just because we've been really grinding really hard, but for good reason, and everything is on the up and up and taking care of life. So that's really good. So not really much else though. It's kind of been honestly like a daze or a blur. Like I don't know that I've stopped since last time we spoke is kind of how I feel.
Me too, honestly. I haven't gotten sick yet, but yeah, I've been going hard too. And not a lot of downtime or like space to take. And so
yes.
Yeah, I find myself getting more irritable versus like, yay. I'll put on like my best face for like customers and stuff. And then I'm like, I get home and I'm like, I just want quiet. Can you guys stop yelling?
Yeah. Yeah. After working like all day, it is hard to have that emotional capacity for the rest of our lives.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's hard. Well, Will is in the waiting room.
Cool.
We're ready to bring him on in.
All right. Let's start.
Yeah, we have a special guest. We're inviting a boy to the girls' club.
Right. There's a.
Hey, Will Keller.
What's up, ladies?
Hi.
Hey, Will.
How's it going?
Yeah, we're good. Welcome to the girls' club.
It's a pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
Welcome to the girls' club. Will, you're the first boy we're letting into the girls' club, I guess.
Excellent. It's an honor.
Yeah, imagine we're like in the treehouse or something.
Perfect. That's where I'm at all the time in my head. That works out great. What episode is this for you? for you ladies?
I think this might be 4.
Or
Number 4.
Cool.
Number 4.
Awesome.
Yep. In the first 3 episodes, we were just doing some kind of, I guess, preliminary talks, and it's very casual and keeping it kind of real.
Sweet. That's what it's all about.
So,
I love seeing it.
and okay, thanks everybody for coming and watching this video today. Girls Club number 4. And today we've got all of our ladies and a special guest, Will Keller, who is a onegreatnetwork.com presenter, as well as he's got a website, willkeller.com. You can find him on various platforms. Go check out his website to see more about him. And today we're going to be talking about, well, it's February, so we're going to be talking about the meaning of love. So the 3 standards I keep to of love, Agape, Philos, and Eros. So the true meaning of love and what these 3 things mean. And we're going to go into it a little bit. So before we really start, does anybody have any notes or thoughts about that before we really get into it?
No, I just said I think we should just jump right in. I read a lot of what you were bringing today, and I think we should just go there and let it flow.
All right, right on. So I'm going to see if I can do this. Can you see that?
yes.
Yep.
I can move this so I can see it. That's soon. Okay. All
Now
right.
we're seeing a Microsoft ad. There we go. There we go.
No one
Yeah,
wants
it's a
to pay
little
for that.
delayed. I'm like, no. All right. So these are some of my notes that I've taken in the past. So I'm just going to jump into our first form of love called agape love, which I like to usually start with that. And I would simply put this as the love of knowledge and all that is in creation, and just like the care that comes with that. So, Will, we asked you to come in today because we really wanted your input on how you would define this type of love, the agape love.
Absolutely. So yeah, I mean, agape, that's how I pronounce it. I think that's the correct form. This comes from the Greek tradition. So it's ancient. It was kind of co-opted into the Bible and Christianity. So a lot of people that are aware of this term know it from the passages of, I believe it's John and Paul, where they use agape, and they're using it in the correct definition. But let's explore this, right? This is cosmic love. It might even be good to kind of talk about what love is. I mean, it's February. This term gets thrown around a lot. I define love as far as in its purest form. It is the force of creation. It is the will of creation that is the force, the intelligent force that is animating everything and is and pushing forward life in general. So to live is an act of love, an act of divine love. And of course, there's many forms like you've talked about, Eros, Philia, Philos, and Agape as well, which I think it's kind of good to dive into those because we can kind of analyze the types of love in the modern world, and we can see where the blockage and the feedback loop stands. A lot of people are stuck in that Eros, which there's nothing necessarily negative about that, but being stuck at that level of awareness and that level of consciousness absolutely is going to have negative effects, especially in the aggregate, in the collective of the human species. When we get to agape, yes, this is love in its purest form. It is the true will of creation, cosmic love, the love for truth, the love for the governing dynamics, nature, right? This is what agape is. And to have a human being align themselves to the pure form of agape, what it really means, it means that you are embodying your thoughts, emotions, and actions into unity consciousness. So where we have Eros is the romantic, erotic, lustful, sexual type of love, right? But this is driven by the lowercase will, our egoic pleasures and desires, motives, right? And then we move up to philia or philos, which is just the love for human beings, for humanity, right? That's good. But being stuck there is also at the level of awareness from the lowercase will, the egoic will. When you get to agape, you recognize the creative intelligence that truth is as nature. And this puts you in a whole different category, especially from perception, because now you're facilitating yourself, your own operation, your own thoughts, emotional, internal ecology to align your behaviors to the truth of nature and creation. So that's how I define agape, cosmic love, the true will of creation. And when you're serving the truth, when you're aligned in agape, you are also serving humanity and serving the self as well. This is in the positive context. So, we can go down many different roads. So that's my initial spiel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sarah, go ahead.
Go ahead, Leslie.
Well, I was just thinking about the two pillars, of care and non-aggression and self-defense, right? As both being expressions of love. And I'm not sure where, maybe they fit in on all three levels, right? Where we can, from our care, protect and defend our Eros or our Philos, or in the larger sense of like protecting the truth, for all of humanity. And I was thinking about there maybe being a feminine and a masculine aspect. When I think of like divine love, I think of sort of an infinite kind of a love that is ever renewing, that doesn't have an end, that is sort of all accepting and compassionate. And I'm wondering how you guys might think that fits in to any of these categories.
I noticed when both Sarah and Will were explaining agape, or that's how I pronounce it, I guess. I think I may have been seeing that as the love for humanity. I've not actually explored in my studies the form of or the word eros. I just knew it as like sexual, lustful, more physically intimate, maybe, or even the thelos or thelio. But it was very, very interesting to hear those perspectives. Yeah, I'm open to your guys' thoughts. I'd also like to discuss unconditional love at some point if you guys would be up for it.
Good one. Absolutely. I'll chime in real quick on what Leslie said, because this is very
Yeah.
important. The the masculine and feminine, and 100%, it applies to all forms of love, healthy forms of love, but especially agape. There is a masculine and feminine, and this would be the true highest union of these two energies, these two polarities of energy. The masculine would be persistence, and the feminine would be care, right? So when you're serving the truth in that agape, you are active, you are taking action, you are not passive. So for an example, understanding the tyranny and the injustice that is going on this planet, and not taking action, then for sure you're not embodying that agape love. Now, the feminine aspect of care, this is the nurturing aspect of the love force itself, right? So you have to be persistent and care to take action, care for truth, care for humanity, and for what is right. And that's all ultimately what agape is. It's the care for what is right and acting on it.
Yeah, absolutely. I would agree with all that, and I would only add that, like, I kind of seem to view it because there's the balance of the masculine and feminine. If you have actual healthy, true care and love for everything, and that exists because it's part of you anyway. And the masculine I would see as the pushing the force, and the feminine as the side of the balance that knows when to pull back and see the full picture, and I think you have to have both if you're going to do that. And so I have, like, a couple of the examples I have here is one of them is I see a lot of it on the internet, especially because it's just rampant, wild, free for all of whatever people want to just say. But I see it out in the real world too, where there's so much division and everybody's butting heads that there is no, love for mankind. There's no love for, there's none of that brotherly love. There's none of that community love. Everybody is just at each other. And when you have that, it doesn't seem like you can you can't really get to the stage where you're like, okay, well, you are a pain in my ass, but I love you, guy. So you can't, it seems like we can't get in that space on a larger scale. And maybe this is what the key is to how we're crumbling as a community, global human family. So, I mean, and like my other example was that a good example that I think of as agape love is when we were in the Revolutionary War, and our founding fathers knew, like, look, we can't keep going on the way we've been going on, and we need to create something new, or at least attempt to, at least try to. And like they had the ideas in their head. They loved their family, they loved their neighbors, even though maybe they didn't always get along, but they had that, and they wanted a better world for the future. And I think that was the point that they had. And that, I think, is a really good example of that they came together despite of whatever differences they may or may not have had. And I don't know, I feel like that may be part of the key that a lot of us are missing. So any thoughts?
I just think that I think it all kind of marries into the other. Just have to speak for myself personally. If I'm not seeking and driving towards that love for truth, then I'm doing a disservice when I'm then loving and caring for my children and my family. So if I don't have that big key factor, it's just I'm not doing as well.
Yeah.
But I talked about it kind of before Will came in too. That everything's just been kind of like I've been in like a daze and a zone, just doing all the things I need to do to provide, and not really doing the things that are on my heart, which is more geared towards truth and great work. So trying to find the balance between those is really important. But they all have to come together, and you're right. There's a lot of that missing out here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think, it's worth mentioning that people lose their way on the path of love when they have been wounded or chronically stressed, right? What is it that knocks people off the path of love?
Yeah, I think
Mhm.
that's a great question. Like what pulls people away from it so far that they can't see anything in front of them. But I do think that the act of going, maybe not necessarily working outward with your community, but if you can start with yourself and the inner workings of your inner home, I think that's where everybody has to start. Otherwise, you can't go outside of that.
Absolutely.
Any thoughts, anyone on that?
I agree. I just agree. I always need to come in and recenter before working outwards. I think the home, not just, I mean, we are our foundation, like the root from which we spring forth from, and our home is a big part of that as well.
Yeah. I
100%.
I think
It's
that's
it's
important.
interesting. One thing I love doing in my studies, especially in the mystery traditions, it's seeing how the Western philosophies or mystery traditions correlate and correspond even to the Eastern. Some of the Eastern philosophies, they had their own levels of love as well, and it was used in the chakra system, right? So the cosmic energy comes through the crown, but it starts at the root chakra, and that moves its way up. And so when you're in that eros, that erotic romantic love, you are rooted in, you're operating your level of awareness and operating from the root and sacral chakras. And then once you move up, then you get to the solar plexus, which is more of the Philos philia, and then you get to the heart, which is really the epicenter, and it's a flowering. But even moving from there, going into the agape is the opened heart center with the higher chakras opened as well. And that is when you get into, wisdom. It's not just knowledge, it's wisdom with the care as well opened. And then that is the agape energy. And we can see a lot of people nowadays, and again, just in the modern age, it's not easy because people are kind of rooted in those lower chakras and rooted in the reptilian mind of just surviving. So that is hard, but still, like you ladies were saying, it's internal, it starts inside. And for someone to set foot on the path, you have to simplify it, and you have to start with the foundational, principles and attributes, and work your way up. But ultimately, a true seeker is one that is seeking that agape love. That's what it is, and trying to harmonize with it. And it will always be rooted in truth and freedom.
It dawns on me that agape love can exist within Eros, within erotic love, and within Philos, brotherly love. And that maybe it is when agape is present that all levels of love sort of transform into something greater, that empowers those different types of unions and affiliations. It's Mark Passio once in one of his interviews talked about, the love of a couple, let's say, a partnership, and that what really makes that love very special and vital is not that they're just looking at each other, but that they are united looking towards truth and on that path together, with agape love.
Mm-hmm.
And that multiplies the power, right? If we are in partnership with our lover or our brothers and our sister, and we're all facing the truth and the love of freedom and truth and knowledge, like how powerful could that be?
100%.
Yeah, absolutely, Leslie. I think you got to have all three, work on all three to have a good, healthy balance.
Yeah,
And
and truth is absolutely vital too, because if it's false and it's not correct, then you don't have the information that you need to make truly informed decisions in your lives. that result will always yield results that are not correct. And so truth is extremely important along the way, I feel.
Yeah.
Absolutely, Brittany. That's a great point because we can look at, the New Age movement
Oh
where
yeah, got
they,
stuck in that for a while. Ooh.
yeah, I can absolutely relate. But a lot of people in the New Age movement, they understand oneness, which that's
Yes.
what agape is, right? It is that macro cosmic love, that oneness. But yet, a lot of them don't have the knowledge and understanding that is grounded and rooted in the here and now. They'll preach about the present moment and the here and now, but they don't understand what is actually going on.
Or
And
how to
this
yield the
is
moment. Yeah.
sure, absolutely. So it's understanding the natural law, the universal forces, but also understanding what the hell is going on the ground, in the here and now, in the present moment, and then doing what is right. So we can kind of see that there's this bastardized version in the New Age movement where it's just all about the oneness and negate the true, accurate present moment of what is going on. So they very much focus on just the macro scope of the universe. Well, we're all connected, everything's one, so it doesn't matter, which they take on a form of moral relativism and inaction
Yes.
as well. So
Yeah.
it's there's a light and dark to to all these topics that we're talking about, but there's
There
also
are.
a pure when you get to agape, the eros, like you were saying, Leslie, absolutely, it trickles down, and they serve each other in symbiosis.
Mhm. And like the love of self, if you cut off the top of the tree, it becomes self-profiting, right? Devoid of truth or other forms of higher love, right? It becomes more of a de facto Satanism when the love of self is cut off from agape love, for example. And so, but yet if you deny the self and just think about the oneness, then we're cutting off the roots. So there is a we're loving oneself, and doing the self work is really an important part of also embracing like all selves, all people that are part of this greater purpose, in agape love. That makes sense. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that that's all important. I agree with that, Leslie. But I just want to bring up since February, it's Valentine's Day, everybody's in the mode of that. I think another big problem with how the concept of love is being diverted into the wrong directions is just false love, false care, empty love, doing things like, I mean, some people, they just think that you only, produce a physical form of your love, like candies and chocolate or whatever, or flowers or whatever, that one time of the year, February 14th, when it comes around, and you're obligated to show that you love somebody. And this, like, I look at this holiday and I'm like, it's just so empty. And it's just, it's an empty holiday. And, I think that that's a thing that we could all do every single day at the same level, including Valentine's Day, and it shouldn't be this obligation. So, do you guys have any, thoughts about that? And then we can move on if you like.
I just agree with you.
Mhm.
Valentine's Day, or we've talked about this so much, like the Gregorian holidays really just drive me mad. Although it's really great for Ubering, that's besides the point. um, but we talk about it all the time, when those things, and Christmas and family and gatherings, and then Valentine's Day, it's like, we really do. We love deeply every day. I'm so fortunate to have that partner that Leslie was speaking about, that Eros love that is just profound and in truth 100%. And it changed everything for me when that union came together. And 5 years in now, and we're on the same trajectory with things, and it's like it's a huge deal, but there's no chocolates or there's no monetary thing, anything that could ever define it ever. So I agree.
Yeah,
That's beautiful.
yeah.
I think
And
of these holidays, like the Hallmark holidays, as being like portals into the dark side, into mind control, where if we're just mindlessly, following the rules of the holiday and buying the cards and buying the this or the that we are really not fully directing our own minds towards truth. So, I tend to really I'm not excited about these holidays too much, other than I think about perhaps the deeper meaning of that's being like overlaid, because most of the holidays are a cover for something that maybe is deeper and has deeper meaning underneath in terms of natural cycles, or deeper pagan acknowledgments of changes of seasons or things like that. So I think that's an important point, and how are we mentally attached, and are we caught up in guilt or obligation, or are we doing what we're doing because we are choosing it with a free mind?
Right.
yeah,
And the conditioning of like, I spent so many years really doing all those things, right? And expecting on Valentine's Day and doing the Christmas, and I spent a lot of years doing that. So to come into the union that I'm in, he taught me so much. My husband, Brett, he taught me a great deal, and it changed everything. But of course, I went through that phase where I had to come away from the conditioning and away from all the things that I thought were, and to realize that they really were never anything. So
yeah, yeah. And I always keep thinking, I think we should just buy a calendar and like rearrange all the holidays on it and like mark it out. Like, no, Valentine's Day is now like, July 28th or whatever, and just like mix it all up and like send that to like a random address. Like, there's your calendar, because I think there's a lot of like emotional attachment too. Like, it's difficult to let go of something that's always been this staple, and one of those is the yearly calendar, and what the calendar says what day it is, like it's National Donut Day or whatever, and they just keep adding like random things to it. So yeah, I agree with all of everything you guys said. So if you want to move on, I thought maybe you could go a little bit more into, maybe it's a two-parter. Will, if you could talk a little bit more about Eros and Philos.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll say something real quick on holidays and how they're celebrated in the modern age. I think it's really misdirection from the natural rhythm of life on an energetic level. Most of these holidays, once you do your research and you educate yourself, they're always most of them are rooted in natural cycles in nature, and to keep people ignorant and disconnected from nature and the flow of energy. So I call it the rhythm of life, and to ultimately keep people ignorant but rooted in the lower mind, right? The lower self, the egoic self. That's that where it's ego dominant. And again, there is a healthy ego, right? There is no such thing in this incarnation as killing your ego. Can't happen. But you can have a healthy being in the world where your ego and your higher self are in union. And when we see something like Eros, it absolutely is rooted in that base level of consciousness where our the animalistic, instinctual attributes of the human being are in overdrive and behind the wheel, and they're controlling it. Valentine's Day is a great example where, there's a lot of control and narcissism around this holiday, where you don't love me unless you buy me this bracelet, or, you have sex with me, or whatever whatever the case may be. And this is certainly what's going on around this holiday. So it's from that ego sense of, you need to validate your love for me. And again, that's just keeping people rooted in the ego, in that lower self. When you get to Philos, that brotherly love, right? Again, it's the love for the familiar, for the family, for your brothers and sisters on a human level, and also your intermediate family. Absolutely. But the agape, like you were saying, Leslie, it does trickle down. When you're in agape, you have the healthy Eros and the healthy Philos as well. So as far as Philos, I mean, again, who was it? I think Brittany, you brought up unconditional love, which this is
Yes.
that's a really good question, because
Yeah.
again, the New Age movement, it's all about unconditional love. Love
So
is unconditional. And
I,
absolutely,
yes.
we could talk about this. Go ahead.
Well, I'm so inspired. I'm so glad you brought that up. And maybe I'm so open to your guys' thoughts if you think differently. Um, but I found that, or for me personally, I don't know that unconditional love exists. And the reason why I say that is because I've just found, like, there's people who hate everybody except maybe their kid or their dog, but they love their kid because it's their kid. It's not somebody else's, and that in and of itself is a condition. They love their animal, their dog, because they've created a bond and it's theirs. And so that is the condition. If it was somebody else's dog, they wouldn't care as much. So I wanted to get your guys' thoughts on that, because they're all about, you're right, that within the new age movement, unconditional love, this and that. And I always felt, a general love for others, but a lot of people also will move forward with unconditional love and have like zero boundaries and get walked all over. I definitely have fallen into that in a couple of different relationships. So yeah, if you guys want to share your thoughts, I'd love to hear them.
Well, real quick, I'll just chime in, because what you were explaining is Philos. This would be the negative context, or the dark Philos or philia, right? And we see this because it's me. It's a solipsistic type of world, and this is what the dark Philos is. It's all about my tribe, screw everyone else. It's all about my family, screw everyone else. This type of mentality. Which is just the dark essence of that, really in name only.
Like pedophilia, right? There's a dark side of that.
Yeah, it's in name only, meaning it's not real love.
Yeah.
It's the lack of love. So I can say the negative side of Philos, but what I'm really saying is that the love is not even there. They're just claiming something, but what that is more about fear, control, coercion.
It's a distortion of love.
Correct.
Yes.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yes, absolutely. I would agree with both Brittany and Will there that with Philos, you can get into the toxic side of it, where it's about ownership. Like, I love my kid because it's mine, instead of I am the steward of this like human being that I created from authentic love. It's a completely different, like, I mean, I would feel the same way about like unconditional love. It's like, well, that means that even say you were to go out and commit a heinous murder, but your brother has unconditional love for you and would not try and stop you, and instead would back you up, like, so that kind of thing. So yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, it makes me think about, like, they also say things like, we shouldn't judge. So I think about this, but we do judge. I think that's our tool of discernment, right? So I think it kind of ties into the same. There are conditions. There's always conditions. and natural law too. It's things are going to be, they're going to fall where they're supposed to fall. So
Absolutely. Like I think
Nailed it.
judgment is an important part of how we do things, like where they do say, don't judge. Like the only thing I don't think you should judge about is a book's cover. So read every book you can get at. Everything else, like
should
judgment is a way we use that.
Right. It's like Philos love is tribal love. And there's a way that tribe or community or family unit can be strong and be a positive, force in the world that can help create security, identity. At the same time, it can have a danger to it if we become too attached to our tribe in exclusion of or judgment of anyone who's different, right? And not recognize that we're all one family, ultimately, the larger familial unit of humanity, right? And Agape. And I was thinking about unconditional love, and I've thought about this before, that it's being presented as like, oh, we're all one, don't judge, love everybody.
Yeah.
And I think that's false. I think that is an attempt to be God, right? Because in a sense, as I think of God, this all that is, this energy of all that level of perspective of all that has perhaps a capacity, or whatever God is, to love, to give grace, to accept all that is, and which includes wrongdoing. But as humans living in this world, I think it's actually dangerous to pretend that we are God in that widest capacity, because we are capable of compassion and forgiveness, and yet there seems to be a need to have some kind of boundary around which that has a value system around life, that does involve some kind of judgment of right and wrong. And in a way, there are certain conditions, because if we accept someone to do a heinous act because it's just unconditional love, right? Is that really, maybe love is really about stopping that. What do you?
I agree. I mean, there is no such thing as unconditional love. Even the will of creation, it's conditional love. The condition is nothing is above the law, natural law, and it applies to all of us. So we are going to have consequences for our behaviors. That is a condition. Or you could look at it as the unconditional part would be the gift of free will, where you can choose right or wrong, but still the condition is there's going to be a consequence for that 100%. So yeah, I definitely think that the unconditional love, the way that it's kind of promoted in the New Age movement, it's very, it doesn't align with truth,
Like
and it is
unhealthy.
part of solipsism. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Sorry if you hear my rooster Henry crowing too. He's like right up against our door, so I don't know what y'all are getting on that end. But
Oh,
he's
I want to hear him.
obnoxious.
Yeah, I was like, you could choose to live out of harmony with the natural law, and there's a condition, there's cause and effect, and then you're probably going to come back for another life, and maybe another yet, to figure it out, right? That's sort of the unconditional, like infinite looping, that someone might be on in this big picture of multiple lives. But yet, what are we here for in this plane, this three-dimensional existence where we have natural law? It is, from my point of view, to learn to harmonize with it, right? So that we can be united in this agape love and really understand our full capacity as humans.
Yeah.
That's why it's
And
important to sorry, go ahead, Sarah.
oh no, go ahead, Will.
I was saying that's why it's good to understand the larger and lesser arcanas, body of knowledge, right? Because the all is mind, that is love. The existence, life itself is an act of love. And then
Getting
the
chills.
lack of love is the involutionary, the fear-based consciousness, which is what we call fear, which is really the lack of love. So, but
Ooh,
understanding
never
the
thought of it like that.
macro in the micro is extremely important. People get lost in, and diluted within these larger concepts, and they relate them and correlate them to the micro. And that is, a cul-de-sac for awareness.
Yeah.
That's what I was gonna say. Will, I was gonna add that in. And this is why I always tell people like what you guys are all talking about, there are consequences. And I try to get people's head because I work more like with the community in real time. And we talk about stuff like this all the time. And I try to get their heads wrapped around the idea. It's like that, you know, because we're so trained to think that certain words only have certain kinds of contexts and whatever, but I'm like, no, a word has a definition. And I try to get them to understand that like it doesn't, like what you do in this life is what creates, and whether that is a good thing you create, or a negative thing that you create. If it's a good thing, you're going to get a positive consequence. If it's a negative thing, you're going to get a negative consequence. This is cause and effect. And I kind of equate it to like they're all part of the same one mind. We're all fractions of that higher source, God or spirit or whatever people want to call it. And we're just here as the physical representation of that in the physical with the power of action. And this is where, this is the whole boots on the ground thing. This is how I view that. It's like you have to be here. And that means if you have to like come back over and over and over again until eternity, then that's, I mean, maybe like I kind of look at it as like a video game almost, only it's like the real life version of Sims or something like that. And there are consequences to every single thing you do, good or bad. And so I try to kind of go by that when I'm explaining it to others. And, usually they can see it that way, but it's very difficult to get out of this idea that, if I say there's a consequence, then it's always negative. And it isn't always negative. Sometimes it's a positive one. Sometimes it's in a way that you didn't expect at all. And I think that is the spontaneous element of our reality too. That's the, something is stepping in to maybe kind of do something spontaneous and quirky, where maybe you needed a push in something, and I've seen that kind of thing happen before as well. Seen it happen in my own life, not like in a religious way, more like, maybe at my high self going, no, this way, and kind of shoving me into one direction that I hadn't even thought of before. So, but I think, our subject that we're talking about today, that authentic love is the core to all of that. It's the key.
Yeah. I'll just add the importance of self-awareness, doing our inner work, learning the skills to regulate emotion, because emotion is all interwoven with these concepts of love, although emotion itself is not love, I think, as we're defining these aspects of love. And so really knowing yourself and being able to be the master of your thought, feeling, and action, mastering your emotion, healing your trauma, knowing your motivations, and your worldviews, really important to be able to kind of like tease away all of that stuff that gets in the way of our true embodiment of love.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
Great point. Because so many people, this is why conversations like this are extremely important on this topic, right? Like, what is love? And so many people equate it to oh, it's just chemicals, it's just certain types of emotions, and there's all this different piecemeal when really it's an embodiment, it's all encompassing, it's holistic in its pure authentic form. So negating the action and the behavior aspect is doing it injustice.
I love
Yeah.
that.
Mhm. Yeah. We were it was in the knitting room when we were talking about a thing that happens called a negging. Do you know what that is?
I've heard of
Mm.
it, but I didn't care enough to remember.
Yeah, so I heard about it years ago, and negging is a great example of inauthentic, narcissistic, empty,
Now I gotta
dead
go look
love.
it up.
And it's usually something done by people who are either, you know, just totally like dumb animals, like beast consciousness, bottom of the barrel, not really, they're so like enwrapped in like, TikTok and, hip hop videos or whatever about giant rear ends and stuff like that. Like that's like their whole personality that they've wrapped around themselves. And narcissists and like people who like to have controlling power over a couple. But it could be anybody who does it, I guess. It's the act of it's a pickup tactic. So it's like the act of going up to say, I, I think usually men do it. I mean, maybe women do it, but I think men usually do it. They'll go up to a woman, they will break her down and insult her just to build her back up again with some sort of small compliment to bring her
Mm.
back up to be, they'd say something like, kind of like, are you sure? I don't know if that dress is working for you. And oh, but you have real pretty eyes. And like, it's shit like that. And it's this form of, I don't know what it is, and I guess it works to some degree, but
It's
that is,
emotional manipulation, right?
yes.
I'm familiar
Yeah.
with exactly what you're talking about. I myself, back in my day, didn't apply those type of manipulation tactics, but had new people that did. And most of the time they would say it very facetious or sarcastic, but
Mhm.
insult and then a compliment. And for some reason, certain women just ate that up. I think it's goes with the programming and conditioning of the bad boy type
Mhm.
of mentality. Um,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
again, this goes to what Leslie was saying about understanding truth itself and ultimately self knowledge, right? And working on yourself where you're at a certain level where then, and if more people do that, then you come together with a partner and that should amplify that progress and that energy as well. So many people are broken and misguided and not working on themselves and in a state of unconscious awareness, and then they come together, which you know keeps going. I think this is the majority of relationships nowadays. And then add that to parenting, and we have a society based in slavery and
Mhm.
and control and ignorance.
Yeah, mind games, really.
Yeah.
Correct.
Which is why great work is so important. How could all this wisdom, how could you possibly, I couldn't go back to wanting chocolates and roses. What do you
Mm.
mean? No way you could possibly want to go back after you've actually felt, experienced, known you're living trivium, these things, and your life is embodying it, and you're teaching it to your children, and you realize that what was before isn't even a fraction of the kind of love that you now know.
Yeah. Brittany,
Absolutely.
absolutely. Like I couldn't go back.
No
I couldn't
way.
go back.
Yeah,
Not in a million years.
Well, I
for
kind of
sure.
feel bad because I get chocolates all the damn time, especially on Valentine's Day, and I like it. I'll enjoy them chocolates, especially like once a month. I'll keep them and eat them, but but honestly I feel very blessed because I've never had a relationship that was so consistently nurturing and loving. And so it's just like an extra day to get me more than the usual chocolate bar or something that's picked up for me.
I don't
And
think there's, go
No,
ahead,
for-
Leslie.
I don't think it means it's bad or negative to give a gift or to receive a gift,
If
you
it's
know?
coming from a loving and genuine place
Yeah.
versus like an
Right.
obligation
Exactly.
or
Yeah.
expectation.
More
So,
speaking
yeah.
from the
That's
place of
right.
not having the wisdom and then coming into it and knowing it and experiencing that real, what it really is. It's just not something you can reverse. So
Yeah.
having the conversation about it and doing the great work and teaching natural law and those things, it's of the utmost importance to share. It's a gift. It's a gift. And
Yeah.
I can't, there's no way I could just hold it to myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know,
Hey, people that want to celebrate Valentine's Day, the issue comes in just tradition in general, right? It's all about the context and the knowledge that one possesses when it comes to this kind of these kind of traditions, right? You
The
have
awareness.
the awareness, exactly. Just like one of my personal mentors, which is Brittany's partner, Brian, a principle of universal law, natural law, is awareness reveals choice.
Yes.
So as you increase your awareness, the choices increase as well. And as your choices increase, pathways and doors open to higher awareness. So, I just want to say that as far as tradition itself, the problem is a lot of people are, celebrating holidays and pulling out credit cards to buy a diamond ring, and they don't have
Yeah.
that knowledge. They're in that state of ignorance and confusion, in that lower self.
Just following what they were programmed to do societally instead of come from
Exactly.
more of a genuine and pure place. There we go.
A lower tunnel vision of awareness, which makes a cul-de-sac and a tunnel of choices, which that is someone that is implementing and playing out programming and conditioning.
Yeah. And then
This is
it's
why
giving
Black Friday
away.
is so important. I mean, so popular, right? And people are
Oh
spending
yeah, I hate that
hundreds and
one.
thousands of dollars.
Yeah, it
So
gives away our energy, our money, our time, our focus in a way that is feeding some dark forces. So it's like thinking about how you give, what you give, and is it feeding Satanism? Is it feeding the commercialism and the greed and the insecurity of the world, or is it actually feeding and enhancing, a true pure love?
Yeah. Yeah, Leslie, absolutely. It's like, I don't think there's anything particularly wrong with people celebrating holidays. I have no real problem with it. My only part of it is when it becomes like inauthentic. But I think, like, we talked about this before, I think during our Christmas or our New Year's episode, where it's like these, the traditions, I feel like tradition should be an inner thing. So it's more like, what are the particular traditions you and your family developed naturally in your own inner home, not just these like robotic traditions that everybody does this because that's just what everybody does, like, I mean, one of the things I would do in my house as a tradition, I guess, is I will put my Christmas tree up the day after Thanksgiving. And all of our decorations that we have are either, old school, like family heirlooms from like the 60s and 70s, or something we made or something we picked out together. No plastic, well, they're plastic, most of them. But they're not these big, you go into Walmart and it's this big old container of like throwaway plastic baubles that, whatever, what do you do with it? Collect it? It's just, it doesn't have any real meaning because it's kind of an empty, it's like going along for everybody to do the same thing. So I think with Valentine's Day, it is good to have, if you have those kind of, your energy goes where your attention flows. So if it's an inauthentic love, it's going to develop into that, and it's going to develop into the negative consequences, that realm. And if it's an authentic one, you're going to get positive ones from it. So, like Brittany, like every Valentine's Day, Brian gifts her with, special gifts, which is great. And I think he probably does that all the time.
He does.
And
Mhm.
Valentine's Day, like, the funniest gift I ever get, the best gift I could get for Valentine's Day is when like other people are shocked that my husband forgets or hasn't, not really forgets, but like doesn't think about it, because we just are like that all the time anyway.
It's another day. Yeah.
So like you get girls who are like, you don't know it's Valentine's Day?
I lost track of the dates this year too.
So-
So we did hear, but the thought was there, even though we were late. But Sarah, I wanted to mention you had said something about that authentic love. And if a relationship is built on inauthenticity, that will eventually show up. And I'm not going to drop a name, but my last relationship actually started on a lie. And it was very, very fascinating because that lie didn't come up until we were back together for like 2 or 3 years. And ultimately, because that was the foundation that relationship was built on, it totally crumbled. It was built on a fracture. It was built on something that was not rooted in truth and honesty, and it completely fell apart. And I just wanted to highlight that because I've actually seen that. I've lived that, but I've
Yeah.
also found a relationship that is a lot more healthy. And we have things come up, but we handle it then and there on the spot, and we always end up feeling closer and finding a sense of resolve. But just since you mentioned that, I had to share a personal experience because I have found that to be extremely true.
Yeah, that's a really good example.
Excellent point. It's like
On the
looking
topic
at
of
when you
love.
start, when you get involved and you start a new, romantic relationship, what's the foundation based upon? Like you were saying, Brittany, right? It was based on a lie, so it had a fractured foundation, which, it doomed to fail, right? But
Yes.
someone understanding first principles, morality, natural law, truth, and has stepped onto that path and is doing that internal work to people, that's going to be a sound, firm foundation. And absolutely, that energy there can proceed in a natural form and fashion, in a natural rhythm.
Yeah.
It's a
Yeah.
powerhouse.
Right. And then from that solid foundation, raising children with the continued value of truth and true love, then that becomes an even wider and more solid foundation, and multiply that, the more people that are building.
Absolutely. It might be like kind of the concept of the pay it forward method, and it's leading by example. Like when your children see, like our children, even if they don't acknowledge it really, or even understand the terms or the information externally, they see what's happening and they take that in. And, a lot of times they construct who they are based off of how we conduct ourselves with others and with ourselves. So I think it's important to, even if we don't have kids, even if you're somebody, you're not married and you don't have kids, that doesn't mean you can't show that same kind of love or care or, treatment towards others when you conduct yourself with proper awareness, with a full rounded embodiment of love. Then that shows. It rubs off into your community, and the people in your community understand how you are going to be, and it affects people that way. Even if you're not in a relationship, even if you don't have children to teach this to, you have children in your neighborhood who will see it happen. And they will absorb that in because they take in everything in their environment. So Yeah.
Really good, Sarah.
Great,
You might
great
be a
point.
good time to bring the Wheel of Fortune card in,
Yeah.
Sarah. And
So, well, I did want to talk
So
about,
pretty.
so this was one of the part of the topic that Leslie brought in. The Irish and Scottish goddess Brigid means the exalted one. And this was, so Emmy, do you know more about it, or would you like to talk more about it?
well, in
Leslie?
a simple way, she is an ancient, well, ageless goddess that is often celebrated during the season of Imbolc, the time of Imbolc around February 1st, and is representing this time when in nature, the cycle of nature where the earth is starting to thaw, you know, and there's a hope and a feeling of winter is going to come to an end. And Bridget or Breedy is, she's the goddess of both fire or sun, and also, you know, and with that energy, the fire of the forge, right? The goddess of craftsmen, and she's the muse, the goddess of poets, and she represents the hearth, you know, in the home where sort of people gather for warmth and gather around the fire and warm up, right? And there's also the well. And so there's an association of water and the deep well of life. So fire and water, sustainer of life, the bringing the evolution of the sun, you know, into towards spring. Yeah.
And
Love
the
the
artwork,
imagery.
yeah,
Yes.
Sorry.
I was just
the
looking
art,
at that's great.
the artwork comes from deviantart.com, so you can, anybody can go and so everybody who may be listening, not listening, you can always go and see the description, and I'll have all this information in there as well for you. But you can go and check out deviantart.com, and the artist is Diddles25, and this is the picture that she made.
What are you
And
doing?
I think that it's a nice picture. I mean, to just embody, I think, even February, you know, like everything that she's supposed to represent, and that the things that she's attributed to, you know, in Ireland, they do celebrate this day. I live there, so they do bring up this day, or some have heard. But I think it's good art because, I mean, you've got, you know, the divine feminine here balanced with how she presents herself. She's got action with her hammer. She's got her writing utensil that is the, you know, what inspiration, you can put that down. And then this part here, our little thatch cross here, is what I was most interested in, because it reminded me of the Wheel of Fortune. It reminded me of the lesser cross and the greater cross. So the Wheel of Fortune, this is in the Rider-Waite Tarot deck, and you can see the greater cross and the lesser cross within it. And I just thought that was an interesting thing. And I don't know, because I know the thatch crosses have a certain type of meaning behind them. It's from what I understand, it's a protection thing. It is you know, embodying protection of loved ones. But I wanted to know what you guys might think about the correlation it comes with the two crosses within the Wheel of Fortune. You've got the lesser cross and the greater cross, and what your guys' thought was on that.
Will, do you have some thoughts
Excellent.
on this?
Yeah, for sure. So I would see the greater cross and the lesser cross as you know, meaning the macro and the micro. And what's cool about Imbolc, and you know, there are many other areas in the ancient past that celebrated this time. I mean, Chinese New Year was just February 10th. So this is a time of coming out of the darkness of winter and now, halfway towards spring. So the light, the fire, working on oneself. It's time to put what we worked on internally into the external world. This is when many types of animals begin their mating season as well. So life is beginning as well. So that's how I would see the crosses. A cross also symbolizes the 4 cardinal directions as well: north, east, south, west. And so that's how I see it: the macro and the micro. Macro being nature, the planet itself / the universe on cosmic level, and then the internal as well, the internal universe, internal ecology.
So my main question is, so this cross is, like this. So I always kind of forget which cross is that, the lesser cross or the greater cross? The one that makes the X. I know there's the X and there's the up and down. So I always kind of forget.
There's also a zigzaggy shape, to that Bridget's cross, and it's similar. I've seen it referenced as similar to the original meaning of the swastika, even, which is a very old symbol for prosperity and good fortune. It's the well-being, that comes with the coming of spring and the knowing that you're planting seeds and you will have abundance. It's hopefulness. That wheel of fortune really symbolizes the passing of times and cycles and rhythms, of which this is one of those cross quarters, in the beginning of February. That's just letting us remember that we're on this journey of change, this rhythm of nature. Yeah.
The wheel of life.
I like that you said that, because sometimes when I'm feeling lost and I pull a tarot card, like regarding work and career, I always kind of interpret it as, oh, it's whatever you want. Like, it's the wheel. But I think I could look at that a little differently now. So I appreciate that interpretation from both you guys.
And I can feel it. This season, I've been really attuning to kind of the weather, the rhythms of the weather. We're in California. We've been having a lot of rain, a lot of sort of darkness, and even with the winter solstice and the sun starting to rise, there's still been a sense of it being in this sort of dark underworld, kind of like the chrysalis, where things aren't quite ready. Even with the Gregorian New Year, that didn't really feel like the new beginning for me. But this season right now, I kind of went through a purging, a deeper like darkening of being sick. But now I'm feeling this natural energy towards creation again. And that's what I like about this image of a wheel, is that we can start to tune into nature cycles. We can start to recognize the elements, that are represented in the 4 zodiac signs in the corners, from, the bull, the Taurus, the earth element, and the Scorpio, eagle, up, and the water element, and the air element of Aquarius, and the Leo fire down below, earth and fire. And how there's this movement, where we're all exposed and experiencing these various elements and energies.
I see Wheel of Fortune. So it was from the Path of the Fool after the Hermit, right? So it's like when I see Wheel of Fortune, it's like we're in that hermit knowledge, and we've gone internally to find these things. And so that's the change, is taking all that we've found in the internal, and then that knowledge is power only in action. So it's that over. And then even when it's reversed, if the card comes reversed, I think is important too. It's not necessarily negative either. It's like there might be resistance, but maybe we're supposed to have resistance because some things we need to resist to, right? Whatever it is, addiction or whatever it is, we need to have a resistant, but in some way, good or bad, just like there's always a condition or a change or a consequence, there is a change to come. So it's a really powerful card.
Yeah.
Mm,
No, whenever I
yes.
pull the Wheel of Fortune card, I always think it's trying to just tell me to step back and consider a little longer before I start making assessments.
Right.
Because I think it is a knowledge-based card. And maybe I'm missing something in my my toolbox of things that I know, and I need to go back and reevaluate. So I think it's a very useful card altogether.
There's
This
so
is
much in
this
this
is
card.
perfect. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, you go ahead. I just wanted to say it is one of these cards that has so much. There's so much to talk about on the Wheel of Fortune card, but yes, go ahead.
Yeah, no, it's a perfect card for even this episode of love, right? This is what the Wheel of Fortune card is symbolizing. It's symbolizing the law of love. Even where you see the Tarot, right? It's spelling tarot, and
I
then it
never
has
noticed that.
the Hebrew as well. So it's saying the wheel of tarot.
Right.
Um,
And
the wheel of tarot. I'm going off memory. I'm not actually reading what it represents. But it's speaking. Let's see if you have it in your notes. The law of Hathor. So it's just talking about the wheel of life, natural law. This is what it's symbolizing. You have the Sphinx on the top as well, which the Sphinx is a feminine deity that represents, she's the protector, she's the guardian of the mystery. So the mystery, my story, the mystery of nature. And then I find it, synchronistic that every one of the directions in the corners, those represent northeast, southwest as well, also represents the seasons, that they each have a book, liber, liberty. So it's pretty cool. It's a fascinating card. I love it.
Yeah.
What is that sort of dog like symbol on the bottom that seems to be stretched over? What does that
It's a
represent?
wolf.
A wolf.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's a fox.
Fox.
Yeah.
A red fox. What do you think that represents?
What I think, I could be wrong, but I'm trying to go off memory. I think that is a fox. It's kind of subversion. So you have the Sphinx, which is the guardian of the mysteries, and then you have the fox. It could be looked at as a wolf. Is more of the kind of the deception that is at play. That could be the falsities, the false prophets, this kind of stuff, the false knowledge. The serpent obviously representing the process of higher awareness and consciousness as well. So that's the beautiful thing about tarot, is that even that serpent, how it's going downwards, has a meaning as well, right? Everything on these cards, especially like the Rider-Waite deck and some of the more older decks, just have so much symbolism and meaning to them. It's fascinating.
I'm really glad that we're discussing these things because during my new age phase, I learned tarot, but I was using other decks because at the time I was also going through my emotional learning and I was just feeling triggered by the cards to where I didn't feel like I could receive the messages so much. So I just learned to read on other decks and that had same meanings, but um not the same symbolism. So it might be fun to revisit the original Rider-Waite deck
For sure.
for me.
I was turning you on. I know I talked about it last episode, maybe the one before too. It's a Michael Tsarion's Path of the Fool series. it's so incredible, and he really I mean, it's hours. I couldn't even tell you. Each episode on each card is 2 or 3 hours long, and it's just an incredible
Yeah,
thing. Something the husband
it's
together when we're driving. That's all we listen to is Path of the Fool. So it's amazing. I'm going to send a link.
Oh,
Very
Promise.
awesome.
fun.
I will
Time.
That's
receive it.
fantastic.
it's a great video. Like I've watched it a couple of times too, and I always appreciate the Rider Waite deck. It's really the only one I use, because it really is just like a totally crazy book. And each card you go through it, and like I can see it. Well, I can see everything that's in there, and I can see, like, every time I go back to it, I can see a little bit more, and I can see the context. But I think also that comes with, like, the more you kind of work with it, not just like memorizing a bunch of meanings or whatever, you got to kind of use some, there's like the historical symbolism, the value we've given our esoteric knowledge over many, many millennia, whatever it is, eventually coming into the form of a deck of cards like this, as how I see it. I think this stuff was always out there, and just by design of, survival, perhaps, that was source or whatever pushing whoever into a direction to go this way or that way to protect the information and make sure it's still in the world. And I think the tarot is something that came from that. But every time I look at the deck and I'm looking at the cards and kind of experiencing a little bit of something new. So yeah, I wanted to bring up the Wheel of Fortune, because I just thought it was very interesting with how I think this card coincides with this piece. And I think it's quite a nice connection. I think if you're looking, you could see this, and maybe you could see the muses in this. You could see a lot of, you could see the Eight of Pentacles in it. I mean, I think, like, the girl who drew this, I think had some knowledge base. So it's a beautiful picture. I'll be sure to leave the link in the description.
There. One last
So-
thing. I think that it's card number 10. And so where the Hermit is card number 9, so we come from this singular self to then like the double digit, almost you could think duality too. I just wanted to point that out too, that we come into this like new, that's all.
And I think this painting or drawing really shows this, like, from death to rebirth, that this season is that this, represented in this transformation of the dark fire, like burned trees, to this brand new growth and life force bursting through, with the fire of hope. It's a very hopeful, like, powerful image.
Yeah. So are there any thoughts about that before we move on to our last little bit?
No, that was lovely.
Yeah, that was excellent.
Okay. So I always like to do a little bit of history, because I think when we understand our history, we have a far better chance of not only just understanding things, but being able to take in things. It's difficult to, I think that it's difficult for a lot of people to take in new information if they don't understand our history. And I've even had people in the past tell me, oh, there's, history is what people think it is, or there's no truth, so I'm like, but there's no real history. I'm like that you can't find any truth in history. I'm like, so how do you think you exist? I don't understand this concept. But I kind of get that a lot, especially on the internet. So but I wanted to go through a little bit of history, and then you can let me know what you guys think about it and what maybe you might know from your own knowledge toolbox. The earliest story we have on Valentine's Day is the pagan holiday Lupercalia. this occurred for centuries in the middle of February to celebrate fertility. Men would strip naked and sacrifice a goat or dog. Young boys would then take strips of hide from the sacrificed animals and use it to whip young women in order to promote fertility. Lupercalia, also known as Lupercal, I don't know if I'm pronouncing any of that right, was a pastoral festival of ancient Rome observed annually from February 13th through 15th to purify the city, promoting health and fertility. Lupercalia was also known as it's probably a typo on my part, sorry, as Februatus, after the purification instruments called Februa, the basis, so there were tools involved. The basis for the month named Februaris. Unlike Valentine's Day, however, Lupercalia was a bloody, violent, and sexually charged celebration, awash with animal sacrifice, random matchmaking, and coupling in the hopes of warding off evil spirits and infertility. Pope Gelasius I outlawed the festival during his pontificate between 492 and 496. Traditionally, many believe that other Christian holidays in February, like Candlemas or Valentine's Day, replaced Lupercalia. So that was just some history I pulled up.
Mm-hmm.
So any thoughts on any of that, guys?
I'm just glad that we live now and we in this modern age.
And can you imagine? In today's world, you just get like all the women turning around and beating them half senseless
to make them more fertile.
It's like, be fertile, God damn it.
That's funny.
You're doing it wrong.
Well, you know, one practice or event they would do at Lupercalia is that they would take goat hides and they would turn them into whips, and then even the whips had like little spikes on them, like little thorns, and they would whip women, and supposedly it aroused the women, and that was also part of the festival, along with the lottery, right? From February 13th to 15th, they would draw a name. You would be with that person for the whole festival. A lot of times, it would turn into an actual relationship or marriage. This is the reason why Glacius outlawed the festival for a time period, is because the Roman in the military, you had to be single. You couldn't be married, and marriage was getting an uptick from this festival as well. So that was one of the main reasons why he outlawed it. Then you have the bishop or the priest Valentinus, and this is, you know, where the name Valentine's Day comes from. They did a martyr for this bishop, but supposedly he was marrying people in secret. He got arrested. He was tortured. He actually, one of the jailer's guard had a daughter, and supposedly she was blind, and he cured her blindness and gave her a note, and they were able to prove that she was cured because she read the note with her fresh, new sight, and it said, "From your Valentine." So again,
very interesting.
Wow.
Yeah, and something to keep in mind, like you were saying, Sarah, I think that's important. There's fragments of history. There's going to be, some that are, correct in truth, and there's going to be deception, there's going to be falsities. You got to take it as a grain of salt. Most of and this goes from the majority of pagan history, it's very influenced by Christianity and Catholicism, meaning that's where the literature comes from, and that's where we kind of get our resources in many cases, and especially with holidays. So Valentine's Day. Yep.
So take the report with a with a little bit of salt because it's through the Christian lens, and they may have exaggerated certain aspects of barbarianism, so to speak, right? You know.
Well,
Yeah,
yeah,
that and the
absolutely.
martyr, right? The holidays are usually centered around, a magical martyr, a saint, and Saint or Valentinus, supposedly lived for multiple centuries. It's like, come on. It wasn't until about the 5th century where they actually established the Christian holiday as, Valentine's Day.
Yeah. And
So
so yeah, I try to always look at the history because it gives me a clearer perspective. So try to encourage this in everybody, but to understand that because we live in this, we live in a global human society, so we have to take in account that there are going to be people who write history, maybe not necessarily not telling the truth, but it's like fragments of the truth, but it may be that's what they think is real, or it's their perspective, or it's something corrupted or whatever. But you got to go into any kind of historical research by understanding that you have to use the tool of discernment when figuring out what you have to you have to make you have to judge you have to trust your own internal compass when it comes to making proper judgment, discernment on what sounds like what has that ring of truth when you're reading history, and what goes, well, that sounds like, you know, crap or nonsense, or, it sounds like, um, you know, people bringing in their own beliefs or perspectives in it instead of just laying to the hard facts, which is why I kind of end up liking all the kind of seminars where it's just the hard facts, like just give me the information. I don't need to know how it makes you feel. Just give me the information.
I think that compass analogy is really good, and it corresponds to the wheel of fortune too. And through knowledge, through the studying and the consideration of all elements, right? And the care of the Sphinx, right? Then you can develop your discernment of where you are. Where are you in the compass is a way to figure out where you are and how to get where you want to go.
Yeah. It's a knowledge-based card. And I covered this information with Brendan Spencer with when we talked about Leonardo da Vinci, and Leonardo da Vinci studied the Vitruvian Man, and that was all about, that he didn't invent that. A lot of people think he invented that, but he didn't. It actually came from Vitruvius before him. But it's all, the Vitruvian Man is all him trying to explain scientifically in the physical realm, the microcosm and the macrocosm, and how it's really a new creation of the Wheel of Fortune. It's basically trying to tell you the same things. So it's a very interesting correlation, I think, and that it really does come down to that. And you've got to, with the topic of love, you've got to have that in the microcosm and in the microcosm. They both have to come together. So
yeah.
Excellent. Well said. Yeah, we see some common attributes with Valentine's Day, and even Lupercalia, right? A festival for fertility and purification, which, looking at the Imbolc imagery, right? Fire, this is what fire represents, purification. Even in where was it? I think it's China. Yeah, China, they have a 2,000-year-old festival as well, and it was for fertility and purification around this same time period. So it's just fascinating that we can see, in different parts of the world, but still common, similar attributes that are rooted in nature and the cycles of nature.
Yeah.
Will, give a plug for your recent radio podcast you did with Crypt Rec on the holidays.
Oh, yeah. So myself and Logan Hart went on to Crypt Rick's I've Been Thinking show on Revolution Radio. I did put a copy up on my website, willkeller.com, and we dove into, the pagan origins, or the origins of Valentine's Day in detail, and it had a whole bunch of other topics that we kind of covered. It's really cool. I think it's going to be a series because we also did Halloween, which came out really well. So we got St. Patrick's Day, which we're gonna blast on, and then of course spring and future holidays as well.
Awesome. Very fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I watched both of those, and I can say to any viewers out there, go and check out the Halloween and the Valentine's Day special that Will and Logan and Crypt Rick, because you three were both of those, right? It was
That's
all
correct.
three of you. And they were both very good because they talked about history. They talked about how people interact with this stuff today, how they did it in the past, and what it means and how to go forward. So both very, very good interviews, and go and check it out.
Yeah.
Well said.
Yeah. Thanks for joining us too, Will. I think we're kind of
Anytime.
winding down, and really appreciated your input and what you have to offer. Yeah.
I had a
So,
blast. Lovely. Thank you for having me on. All you ladies, appreciate it.
thank you for coming, Will.
The sun has set in Kansas City. I'm sorry, I'm in dark.
I
You're in
know, I'm not
darkness.
far. I'm like 2 hours away, and we have terrible lighting in the trailer.
Yeah. Well, this has been fun. Thank you, Sarah, for facilitating and
Yeah.
being the really the holder of the fire of this project.
Yes,
Well,
absolutely.
thank you guys for coming and joining me every month. Thank you, Will, for coming and doing our February talk with us. Hopefully this will continue, and we will have a new video up next month. They usually come out about the middle or the end of each month after we record them. So thank you everybody for coming, and thank you for watching, and go and check out the onegreatnetwork.com, go check out willkeller.com, and go check out Leslie's website,
AliveThrive.life.
yeah,
Although I'll say my website is giving me trouble and uploading, so you can see a more complete amount of my work on the One Great Work Network, or on YouTube or Odyssey. I have channels.
So thank you guys so much again for another great episode. I really appreciate it, and until next time, I love you, homies. Take it easy.
Yeah.
Agape.
Thank you guys.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.